Complacency doesn't usually show up all at once. It's subtle, quiet, it builds over time. But there comes a moment where something shifts. And I have Marty here with me today. We were talking in part one about some of those moments when he recognized that he was struggling with complacency and how the fix for that was becoming more intentional. So if you didn't get to watch part one, pause here, go hear Marty's story so you don't jump in midstream. Are you tired of repeating the same patterns, feeling stuck in your story, and wondering if real change is even possible? In my book, Unstuck, Break Free from What's Holding You Back and Create a Life You Love, I walk you through the path from survival to transformation, blending faith, neuroscience, and soul deep healing. This book, it's not just words on a page. It's a companion for your journey. Whether you've experienced trauma or just feel lost in the noise of life, Unstuck will meet you there with truth, compassion, and tools that actually work. It's time to stop surviving and start living your story with purpose. Grab your copy today on Amazon, but we're going to talk a little bit more today about steps that he took to break that cycle and begin living intentional. Thanks, Marty, for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me, Megan. It's a pleasure.
Let's talk a little bit more about steps. We were talking about marriage, but intentionality matters no matter where you're at in life and what you're doing. So tell us how you applied this into life and business so that our listeners can take action on what you're sharing.
So I think the key is, intentionality is everywhere, whether it's business, your marriage, your parenting, even how you have fun. Like we all need it. And complacency is always the enemy. And complacency always breeds more complacency. I know, like for me, on days that I have like a rest day or whatever, it's harder for me to create my regular rhythms that I would normally do that are very intentional. If you have one cookie, it's much easier to have two cookies or three cookies. But
It's a weakness for me. I've got to keep the sugar like out of the house
yeah,
because
because once you give in, it's
yes.
the whole thing. So, but that's what complacency does, and it makes you. It just gets easier and easier. So we were talking about marriage and how I was complacent in marriage, and so what we did, we proactively took some intentional steps. But I think the bigger thing to do here, Megan, is just reverse engineer it. Whatever aspect you're talking about, you want to be a better parent, reverse engineer that. Think about, and not to be morbid, but think about what your obituary, what you wanted to say about you. You want to say you're a loving mom or husband or wife, like then that means you need to do that. Do you want to say that you were present? Well, then you're going to have to put parameters on your phone. Whatever you want your legacy to be, reverse engineer that. Just like you were reverse engineering a couch to 5K. Like if you were to follow that training plan, you would start with the end in mind, and then you would build up and you would do little things every day. And the first day would be very small things, but those intentionalities would compound with time. So like in our marriage, we started reading books, we started going for walks. We said we were going to do one date night a week. I think we tried for Thursday night. It just never worked. So we pretty religiously do Monday nights now. Only competition there is Monday Night Football, but it's fine. I can skip. But it becomes the priority. We also try to do one marriage conference a year. And we've also really been trying to mentor other couples. As you know, that's the other thing that happens as you become intentional and you build momentum and your life starts to snowball in a positive way, then you get to start impacting others. So, and then of course that has the compound effect of now you have to live it more. There's been lots and lots of fruit from just being intentional in our marriage and me not thinking providing was going to meet my wife's needs, because at the end of the day, she didn't care how much money I made or how much money we had. It was all about being present and being there for her. So,
I was having this conversation with someone the other day, and when I was growing up, one of the things that was often pointed out is we love you because we provide for you. And that is true. And yet I still wanted something deeper. I'm like, well, I don't want private school if I can have more time, or different things like that. And I, unfortunately, because I didn't deal with those wounds, those
Mhm.
unhealthy ways of coping that I developed, I kind of became what I didn't want to become
Sure.
because I was not reverse engineering it and saying, wait, I want this for my kids. And now, my oldest is 23 and I had to go back and say, listen, like I got these things wrong. This was not the parent that I hoped to be in some of these cases. And it's been really amazing how when you can be intentional, even after being complacent and you can't
Yes.
go back to those and redo because now he's much older, but we can talk about it and we can heal from it. And I can choose to do something different. And I think sometimes people think, gosh, I'm so far gone. Does it even matter? And I think it does.
It does.
It's never too late.
We've all seen those Instagram reels where, the person's 500 pounds and they shrink down, and nobody's ever too far gone. No marriage is ever too far gone. Like, apologize and start over. Like, push the reset button. With your kids, like, the biggest way you spell love to a kid is Time, and it's time. And they can be so forgiving if you sit and hang out and play and interact with them. But when we as parents think that our providing is meeting their emotional needs, we're wrong. Hate to say it, but we are wrong, and we're doing those things a lot of times for ourselves. And it's for how people view us, or maybe it's because we felt bad because we didn't have that as a kid, so now we want to give it to our kids. But however it is, there's this guilt associated with it. But it's on us, and if we would sincerely ask our loved ones if they want us doing XYZ, most of the time I think they would say I'd rather have you here. But we don't want to give it up.
I think you're right. There is oftentimes competing interests. I really value being seen in a certain way because this was my life. I admit I'm recovering from perfectionism and people pleasing, and I wanted to be seen like I had it all together. I mean, when God told me I was going to do a podcast and I was going to tell all the things I didn't have together and the damage that it did, I was like, oh, wow, this is really scary. But it's been so freeing to just acknowledge the reality because my mind, my body, my spirit always knew the truth. And so then I'm exhausted and burnt out of trying to have this facade. This is how it looks. The kids are all perfectly, staged for pictures and all of these things. But then I put so much pressure on my kids too to have this image. And none of us were connected. None of us were enjoying it. And it was like, wait a second, why are we doing this? And honestly, I had to get back to these things from childhood.
Mm.
And again, this is not a blaming of people because I believe our parents, like most parents, are trying to do good than trying to intentionally harm their kids. But intentional or unintentional, it happens. And so we want to have that space with our kids, just like you had with your wife, where they can come to us and we can talk about those things so that we can meet them there. And then we'll all feel more joy and satisfaction out of the relationship because we were created for connection.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that I can be very task orientated as well. I don't know if that's what you were communicating, but I can be very task orientated. And yeah, it just doesn't, it's not the same as not caring about whatever task I think is important as much as just spending time with them. So, and I think it's easy to do that to our kids, and I do think that we do try our best, but we are going to wound our kids. But I think because of that, it's important for us to learn to apologize and, and be able to push the reset button with that relationship. Because I know there's things I've done to my kids. I've got it. My oldest is 22. And so, as you know, Megan, as they get older, then they start to tell you the truth. And at least that's how it is for me. My kids are now like, hey, Dad, you should really fix XYZ because that was hurtful to me. And, I didn't know about it, but now hopefully I get to do a better job with my younger kids.
I love this saying that was spoken over me when I was doing some work, deep work, and trying to learn how to reparent myself and parent different at the same time. And it was, when you know better, you do better. It's like you have a choice. If you keep denying it and you put your head in the sand, well, you can't know better, you can't do better, you can't change anything. And so again, it comes back to feedback is a gift, and that when our kids or our spouse comes and they're sharing their heart, if we can just recognize that, yes, I am activated, because most of the time it's like, gosh, I am so disappointed in myself. Like, I don't want to show up in that way for them. And so sitting with that discomfort without reacting outwardly towards them, and turning in and listening. And I remember having a hard conversation with my youngest, and she's 16, and we were actually in a counseling session, and we were sitting there, and she was saying some hard things for me to hear. And I had been doing this work for now many years, and so I'm a little bit more aware than I was 10 years ago, thank God. But I recognized in the moment my body shifted away, and I was like, whoa, what just happened when I realized it? And it was not that I really wanted to turn away from her because I want to hear her. That's my heart, but my body was reacting. And then what happens is someone else reads your body language, and then they start reacting to that. And I was able to say, you know what? I am so sorry. I just realized I turned away from you, and because I was feeling activated. This is hard, but I'm here for it, and I want to hear what you have to say. And I leaned in, and it changed the entire dynamic by actually recognizing that. It only comes with practice, but that's what you're talking about, is just, how we practice, how we show up and on the daily is what moves us forward. So you've been doing this in your relationships, but I'd love to talk a little bit about business as well. I am an entrepreneur. I love startup. I love growing businesses. Tell me how you use this to
It's
develop your real estate business.
every day in business because we flip houses, and so it's contractors. And if I am not intentional with a contractor, number one, I will be disappointed with the outcome because I won't, he can't read my mind. But number two, maybe this isn't true, but like 9 times out of 10, they're going to ask for money too soon, or a job's not going to be complete. And so you have to be intentional with contractors. You have to make sure the work is done. You have to make sure it's done to satisfaction, and you check everything. This happened to me last week. Contractor texted me, it was Friday, and he said, "Hey, the flooring's all done. Can you pay me?" And so I paid him, and I checked on it on Saturday, and it was not all done. And so intentionality, even in business, is checking on your guys, checking on your employees, checking to make sure things are done as communicated. And ideally, you have the right guy, and they don't do that. I mean, he had a good reason as to why it wasn't done, but I told him, like, why didn't you just tell me that? But I would say the biggest way, Megan, in numbers, and I have a story about this in my book, is numbers. You got to pay attention to your numbers as an entrepreneur, especially as a startup. If you don't, you can be upside down and never know it. So know your numbers, that you can't outspend your budget. Like, you got to know what you can spend and how to stay in it and make it profitable. Big businesses die for the same reason little businesses do. But when you're little, you don't have the capital, the resources that the big businesses do. So you've got to pay more attention to it. And that's complacency. It's not wanting to track your numbers or look at the spreadsheet or check the bank account, but you've got to do those things. And it all has to be a little bit of intentionality, writing down when you write a check, or tracking it, or checking it.
I never thought of those things as complacency. It's just kind of like, well, I just don't want to do it. I don't like that. And
It's
it's like, well, then if you don't like it, you better find someone, and then you're going to have to pay someone to do it, because if you don't, the outcome is definitely not the one you're dreaming of,
yeah.
right? If you reverse engineer it and you say, here's where I want to be, but you just don't take the steps, do it yourself or hire someone, you'll never
You'll
get
never get there.
there.
Never.
Someone sent me a message the other day, and it was a picture, and it said, a dream without a plan execution is a delusion. It really is. Like, getting to where you dream of, whether it's in your marriage, your parenting, as an entrepreneur, it doesn't just happen.
Complacency happens. That's easy.
Yes, it is. Well,
That's the
exactly.
default. The default is complacency, and that's why it has to be killed. It's not a one and done. You have to always keep killing it, because intentionality is work, and you can't check the numbers for your business once a year. Maybe you're super profitable, but most people aren't.
Right.
You need to know where your numbers are, and you can slowly build that dream, but you're gonna have to track it and pay attention and cut spending and cut unnecessary things and figure out what's working, what's not working.
I think you just said something really, like, just stuck out to me when you said it takes time. You- I'm someone who, I'm a big dreamer, and I want it all to happen
Right now.
right away, which I think most of us, right? We're the fast food, fast everything. We just want what we want, and we want it now. We want it the easy way. And we'll cut corners and try to get there, but ultimately it doesn't. It takes time. It takes learning new skills, increasing your capacity and your capability to be able to hold that big dream. Like, the bigger the dream, the harder and the longer it's going to take, I think, to get there, because you have to become qualified along the way. In wrapping up, how did you become an entrepreneur? Did this come out of having that conversation with your wife and making adjustments in the work that you were doing?
I've always been an entrepreneur. So I started flipping, honestly, because I thought I want to have rentals, because I'm never going to get a retirement plan. I just knew I wasn't going to get mailbox money, but I figured I could if I had rent houses. So that was why I got into rent houses, was to try to create mailbox money down the road, a retirement. And just realizing that I'm not going to put in 30 years somewhere. Just, it's not who I am.
Yeah, that's important. Knowing who you are and what works for you is half the battle. You also need support when
Yeah.
you're, and being around like-minded people, and that are willing to take the feedback and do the hard work, who are going to encourage you when it gets hard. So how can people connect with you? Tell us a little bit about your book and the work that you're doing to support people to kill complacency and live their best life with intentionality.
I have a webpage called killcomplacency.com. There's some resources there I can grab. Some of those are goal setting things. If people are interested in marriage books, there's a marriage resource there on books and kind of a paraphrase of what each book's about. I would highly recommend that. But there's some resources there. I have a webpage called martyhoffman.com. Hoffman is one F and two N's. So if you spell that right, you'll find me.
Awesome. And I will link everything in the show notes, so you will not miss out if you are trying to find it.
But yeah, we just wrote a book. It should be out here in a couple weeks, maybe a month. It's my first time, so I'm not really sure the timeline, but we should have it on Amazon. That's the place to get it. It's called Kill Complacency. Each chapter is going to start with a story from my life on complacency. So it's been kind of, you mentioned earlier, freeing to, let my secrets out, and things that I held on for years that the world needs to hear. It's how we can improve the world, is by being real and authentic. So each chapter will start with that, and then I'll talk about complacency and intentionality and how we can have the life we want if we'll reverse engineer it and live with some intentionality.
I love that. It sounds very similar to my Unstuck book, and how creating a life you love. And it's about sharing what I learned, but my story is not your story, but we all have some similarities, and then helping people take time to sit with questions
Mhm.
about their own story and how they can move from being stuck to unstuck. So I can't wait to get your book. I really appreciate you being here with me today, Marty, and sharing a little bit about your story and how you are using it to make a difference.
Thanks, Megan, for having me.
If this conversation spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this with someone who's been feeling stuck or disconnected, maybe complacent. And follow the podcast for more real, honest conversation. And if you've been drifting, let this be the moment you choose something different, because your life isn't meant to be lived on autopilot. Take care. Thanks for listening.